In 1919, after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, and for Germany it was not merely a peace document but also a symbol of national humiliation. The treaty declared Germany solely responsible for the entire war and imposed heavy reparations, military restrictions, and territorial losses. Its army was limited to 100,000 men. Its navy was reduced, and it was not allowed to establish an air force. The Rhineland was demilitarized, and Alsace-Lorraine was returned to France. Germany completely lost its colonies. This situation caused great anger and resentment among the people. Inflation spiraled out of control, and the currency became worthless. In 1923, a loaf of bread began to be sold for billions of marks. This economic collapse and social uncertainty created fertile ground for radical ideologies. The Republican government appeared weak in the eyes of the public. In exactly this environment, figures like Adolf Hitler transformed the people's anger into an ideological form, promising revenge. Born in 1889 in the town of Braunau in Austria, Adolf Hitler grew up under the shadow of an authoritarian and strict father figure during his childhood. He had a strong interest in art. He applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts with the dream of becoming a painter, but he was rejected several times. During this period, he struggled with poverty and lived in shelters. These years he spent in Vienna shaped him deeply. It was here that he was introduced to racist and nationalist ideas. His anti-Semitic thoughts also took root during this time. Unable to find his own identity, this young man gradually turned his personal anger into ideological hatred. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 was a turning point for Hitler. He volunteered for the German army and spent 4 years on the front. He was awarded for his courage. After a gas attack, he temporarily went blind. The surrender of Germany at the end of the war devastated him. Hitler perceived this defeat as a personal betrayal. He began to see Jews and communists as those who had stabbed them in the back. These years were when Hitler transformed his personal trauma into ideological revenge. In post-war, collapsing Germany, Hitler joined a small right-wing group called the German Workers' Party. He quickly became the most powerful figure in the party and transformed it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP. Drawing attention with his oratory skills, Hitler gathered thousands of people around him. In 1923, he made an unsuccessful coup attempt, the Beer Hall Putsch, and was imprisoned. During his imprisonment, he wrote his ideological manifesto Mein Kampf. As Germany struggled with economic crisis and began to see him as a savior, the Nazi movement became a mass force. The 1929 depression created great poverty and hopelessness in Germany. Hitler used this environment skillfully. With masterful propaganda, anti-Semitism, and nationalist rhetoric, he drove the masses forward. In 1933, he was appointed Chancellor by President Hindenburg. In the same year, he used the Reichstag fire as a pretext to suspend freedoms. He then suppressed the opposition and transitioned to a one-party system. When Hindenburg died in 1934, Hitler combined the titles of President and Chancellor and declared himself Führer. Now, absolute power in Germany belonged to him. As Hitler turned Germany into a totalitarian state, Nazi control was established in every area. The SS and the Gestapo became the regime's internal security apparatus. Everything from the education system to culture was ideologized. The Hitler Youth became compulsory. Discriminatory laws against Jews were enacted. The 1935 Nuremberg laws stripped them of citizenship. The 1936 Berlin Olympics became a showcase for Nazi propaganda. The Kristallnacht of 1938 marked the moment when anti-Jewish violence became state-driven. In the spring of 1938, Germany took a new and bold step in international politics, the annexation of Austria, Anschluss. Hitler's propaganda machine presented this move as the unification of the German people. The German army made a massive display along the border. Tanks, infantry, and artillery units were deployed at the Austrian frontier. The Austrian government was militarily weak and politically isolated. Resistance was impossible. When German troops entered the country on March 12, 1938, a large portion of the population welcomed them with enthusiasm, though this enthusiasm was an illusion fueled by propaganda. The government surrendered quickly, and Austria was officially annexed by Germany. This annexation was a demonstration of Hitler's strategy of combining soft power and military threat, achieving expansion without major conflict. Then, in the same year, Hitler turned his eyes to Czechoslovakia. Using the German minority in the Sudetenland as a pretext, Hitler applied pressure through a combination of diplomacy and propaganda. Britain and France did not want to risk war. On September 29, 1938, with the Munich Agreement, the Sudetenland was handed over to Germany. This agreement became an international example that legitimized Hitler's expansionist policy. But Germany's goal was not limited to the Sudetenland. The remaining regions of Czechoslovakia had weak defenses, and the country could not rely on support from the Soviets. In March 1939, German troops entered Prague, most Czech lands were occupied, and Slovakia was turned into a puppet state. During this period, the world watched Hitler's aggressive moves but did not take serious military action. Britain and France confined themselves to diplomatic reactions. They issued only condemnations and warnings. This situation further fueled Hitler's appetite. He now saw that expansion in Europe was possible without major and rapid conflict. The German leader carefully planned every move he could win, both militarily and diplomatically, and he influenced his people and neighboring states with a combination of propaganda and fear. This process was a critical turning point in the preparatory period of World War II. It was the era when Hitler's expansionist strategy progressed successfully and his confidence reached its peak. These actions accelerated Hitler's expansionist policy and boosted the morale of the army. The Wehrmacht was equipped with panzers and modern tanks, able to operate in the field in an integrated manner with motorized infantry and the Air Force. German warplanes carried out dive-bombing missions and secured air superiority, while German submarines, U-boats, threatened strategic sea routes. At the same time, the Army's production and logistics capacity had been strengthened, and the shipment of weapons and ammunition became systematic. These preparations paved the way for Germany's next step, the invasion of Poland, and opened the door to a new war in Europe. Hitler had long viewed Poland as a target that would secure Germany's eastern borders. However, he did not want a Soviet intervention during an attack on Poland. For this reason, he took a bold diplomatic step. On August 23, 1939, he signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Soviet leader Stalin. This agreement appeared to ensure that the two countries would not attack each other, but behind the scenes there was a much more critical clause, the partition of Poland between the two major powers. Thus, Hitler secured his eastern flank while attacking Poland. Stalin, through this agreement, planned to gain territory without entering a war with the West. On the morning of September 1, 1939, under Hitler's orders, the German army invaded Poland. With the blitzkrieg tactic, air raids, artillery fire, and fast panzer units advanced simultaneously. Hitler believed that speed and shock would determine the course of the war. Indeed, the Polish army could not withstand the intensity of this attack. Another step Hitler had calculated also came to pass. on September 17, the Soviets attacked from the east. Thus, Poland was trapped between two giant powers. Hitler did not take the risk alone, he cooperated with the Soviets for the complete fall of Poland, and the country was split in two within a short time. These developments created a great rupture in Europe. Britain and France had long believed they could stop Hitler through diplomatic means. But the invasion of Poland showed that Hitler would no longer step back and that he was determined in his expansionist policy. For this reason, on September 3, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. For Hitler, this declaration was not a surprise but a strategic turning point. Now the war had become a vast struggle that would redraw Germany's destiny. From this point on, Hitler would turn his attention westward, and the great confrontation with France and Britain would begin. Immediately after the invasion of Poland, Hitler turned his attention westward. The declaration of war by Britain and France pushed Germany into a two-front conflict, but Hitler took this risk. His plan was clear: to force Western Europe into quick surrender with fast and decisive blows. Hitler aimed to use the Wehrmacht's modern tanks, motorized infantry, and the Luftwaffe's air superiority to crush enemy lines. In April 1940, Hitler ordered attacks on Denmark and Norway. This move aimed to control the North Sea and the Baltic coasts and to threaten Britain's sea supply routes. The Wehrmacht advanced quickly and methodically, the Luftwaffe secured air superiority and broke enemy lines. Denmark surrendered quickly, while Norway was more resistant due to its strategic ports and iron ore shipments, but German forces soon gained the upper hand. Hitler's main goal was to capture France with lightning speed. The plan involved bypassing the Maginot Line with an indirect attack through Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. In May 1940, the operation began. The Netherlands and Belgium fell quickly. In Belgium in particular, German tanks advanced rapidly. German air raids paralyzed enemy units, and panzer units infiltrated France from Luxembourg, breaking through the Maginot Line from the Ardennes region. Hitler was not personally commanding this fast and coordinated attack, but he closely followed the planning on the ground. The effectiveness of blitzkrieg tactics was a demonstration of Hitler's strategic genius and the Wehrmacht's preparation. On June 10, 1940, with Italy entering the war, France's situation worsened. On June 22, 1940, France surrendered. Hitler did not enter Paris himself, but the French government signed the surrender agreement. This victory brought much of Europe under German control and raised Hitler's prestige to its peak. Britain was still resisting, but now it was alone and forced to focus only on air and naval warfare. During this period, emboldened by victory, Hitler set his eyes on the East, on the Soviets and his ultimate target, Russia. But first he wanted to bring Britain into line and secure control in the Mediterranean region. Hitler believed Britain was diplomatically isolated. With France also collapsed, he thought London would be forced into peace talks. However, Britain took an entirely different stance under Winston Churchill's leadership. Churchill refused to accept any agreement Hitler offered. In his view, Germany's expansionism threatened not only Europe but the future of the world. From the early months of the war, Britain began to rely on logistical and economic support from the United States. Although the US had not officially entered the war, it undermined Hitler's calculations with the Lend-Lease program, providing aircraft, ships, weapons, and ammunition to the British. In the summer of 1940, Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe to gain air superiority in order to force Britain into submission. The plan was simple: to strike British airfields and radar stations, to destroy the RAF, Royal Air Force, then to carry out an amphibious landing operation, Sea Lion. The Luftwaffe initially made significant progress. However, the British radar network, highly maneuverable Spitfire pilots, and new supply lines from the US changed the course of the battle. Additionally, Hitler's decision to begin bombing London gave the RAF a chance to recover. This strategic mistake was well exploited by the British. As a result, Hitler realized that Britain would not surrender and was forced to halt for the first time on the Western Front. This situation was an important source of morale for the Allies. Britain had managed to resist alone, and US support was increasing. Hitler, on the other hand, turned his face back to the east. The gateway to the east, the road to Barbarossa, 1940 to 1941, for a long time, Hitler had only one major objective in mind, the destruction of the Soviet Union. To him, Soviet territories were Lebensraum, meaning living space for the German people. Moreover, the Soviet Union's rich oil fields, iron-steel resources, and wheat reserves could make Germany's war power nearly limitless. But the Allies were also aware of Hitler's thoughts. Churchill warned Stalin, and intelligence reports said that a storm was approaching the Soviet doorstep. Yet Stalin believed that Hitler would not attack. He thought the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was still valid and trusted that a conflict with Germany was several years away. During this period, Hitler began extensive preparations. Massive logistical lines were established to the Eastern Front. More than 3 million soldiers were gathered for the operation. Panzer divisions were reorganized. The Luftwaffe was prepared and deployed for an eastern operation. New motorized units were produced for rapid advance. The Allies, meanwhile, were trying to predict when and where Hitler would strike. There was no official alliance yet between the United States, Britain, and the Soviets, but each was preparing in its own way to stop Germany's next move. The beginning of Barbarossa, the shock of the Allies. On the morning of June 22, 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest land offensive in history. The massive German army deployed along the Soviet border advanced simultaneously on three broad fronts: Northern Army Group, toward Leningrad Central Army Group, toward Moscow Southern Army Group, toward Ukraine and the Caucasus. This attack created a huge shock in the Allied world. Churchill, despite his hatred for Hitler, immediately turned toward an alliance with Stalin. The United States decided to send urgent aid to the Soviets. The Red Army, one of the largest armies in the world, was caught unprepared in the first weeks of the attack and suffered heavy losses. For Hitler, this operation was a matter of life and death. He had failed to defeat Britain, and the United States was becoming increasingly involved. If he could not win a swift victory in the East, the balance of the war could shift. For this reason, in the first months of Barbarossa, Hitler gave his commanders a single order: don't stop. Advance. Operation Barbarossa, which began on June 22, 1941, advanced rapidly in the first weeks as Hitler had planned. Panzers and motorized infantry broke through Soviet defenses, the Luftwaffe gained air superiority, and millions of soldiers quickly penetrated deep into Soviet territory. Hitler placed his greatest confidence in the Central Army Group advancing toward Moscow. He believed victory would be won there. However, the Soviets displayed unexpected resistance. Stalin's harsh determination and General Georgy Zhukov's tactical brilliance slowed the German advance. For the first time, Hitler was forced to hesitate near Moscow. The severe winter conditions caught the German army unprepared. Motorized units had to advance through snow and ice, and the mobility of tanks and trucks was greatly restricted. Meanwhile, Hitler refused to change his military strategy. In his view, A swift and total victory was essential. Slowing down could shift the course of the war in favor of the Allies. The Soviets strengthened their defenses and launched counterattacks during the winter. This was Hitler's first serious military failure on the Eastern Front and affected him psychologically. In 1942, Hitler focused on Stalingrad to achieve victory in the east. The objective there was to seize the Soviet oil fields in the south and reach the Caucasus. At first, the German army made significant progress and quickly besieged the city. However, the fighting within the city was intense, Russian resistance was extraordinary, and the harsh winter conditions wore down the German troops. Hitler frequently ignored the advice of his commanders and prolonged the operation with orders that insisted the city will never fall. The Soviets launched a major counterattack at Stalingrad and encircled the German army. In early 1943, the German forces, ordered by Hitler not to surrender, were forced to capitulate. This was Hitler's first major defeat on the Eastern Front and changed the course of the war. The Allies attached great significance to this defeat. Britain, the United States, and the Soviets saw that Hitler's advance could be stopped. The United States was now officially involved in the war and began sending more troops and resources to Europe. This marked the beginning of a period in which Hitler's strategic plans grew increasingly strained. From 1943 onward, Hitler's Germany began to collapse under the destructive burden of a multi-front war. In the east, the Soviets recovered after the victories at Stalingrad and Kursk and launched major counteroffensives. Hitler, despite the insistence of his generals, refused strategic withdrawals. He ordered absolute defense everywhere. This stubbornness increased the army's losses and irreversibly changed the course of the war. Since the 1930s, Japan had expanded in Asia, establishing a vast empire in China, Korea, and the Pacific Islands. Its economy was mobilized for war. It had a strong navy and air force. In 1941, it attacked Pearl Harbor, drawing the United States into the war. In the early years, Japan advanced rapidly in the Pacific, but after 1943 it began to retreat under U.S. superiority. In 1945, after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Soviet offensive, it surrendered. At the same time, the Soviets began advancing toward Germany through Poland. As the Eastern Front collapsed, Hitler's ability to make decisions narrowed. He drafted new plans, but there was no opportunity to implement them. Soviet forces approaching Berlin overturned all of Hitler's strategic calculations. The Führer became increasingly isolated in his headquarters, and his communication with his advisors diminished. By April 1945, Berlin was besieged. Hitler spent his days in the underground Führerbunker. Most of the loyal generals were either dead or had surrendered. The German army was now fragmented, and the city lay in ruins. Hitler refused to surrender. His obsession with revenge and ideological victory still bound him to the struggle. On April 29, 1945, while the ruthlessness and destruction of the war still echoed through the ruined streets of Berlin, Adolf Hitler made one final personal decision. He married Eva Braun, who had been by his side for years, in a quiet and lonely ceremony. This marriage, though it might appear like a celebration from the outside, actually took place under the shadow of despair and the approaching end in the underground bunkers of the headquarters. Every step was like a rhythm striking the concrete walls of the Führerbunker, reminding them of Germany's collapse. Hitler, who had preserved his personal anger and ideological stubbornness throughout the war and directly influenced the lives of millions, now chose the end together with Eva, the only person who had remained loyally by his side for many years, in a world where survival was no longer possible. On the morning of April 30th, in the dark and smoky rooms of the Führerbunker, he ended his life with his own hands. Eva Braun, beside him, looked at him one last time, and together they left the world in silence. Their lifeless bodies were burned by the staff of the headquarters, leaving behind only fragments of ash. As Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945, the millions of deaths, destroyed cities, and shattered lives left behind by Hitler's regime, built solely on his personal anger, should not have been its only legacy. People around the world faced the dark face of war for the second time, and this time they experienced it in a much more painful way.